So some of the same issues come up that we saw with gender when we start talking about racial and ethnic identity. Again, like, science has not given us answers to these questions, and in some cases, science is biased itself, which seems odd because we assume that science is objective. But if you look at some of the quote scientific theories that have been used to talk about race in the past, polygenesis is one such theory. This is the idea that the races were somehow distinct species that didn't arise from a common ancestor. And this is obviously false, but people believed it until the late 1800s. And there are lots of similar theories about both race and gender. So some people have come to ask for this reason. The reason that science can't answer these questions is whether race is really a category at all. It seems like science can't really pin it down in a way and say, well, this is what it means to be this race or another race. And it's clearly not really a true biological category. So the question is it a category we should just dispense with? And there's many reasons to think why people want to keep it and not get rid of it completely. And we'll see those in a minute. So part of it is the tie to ethnicity, which includes kinship, cultural traditions, common linguistic heritage, and religious affiliation. So it seems that race is tied to these things, though race is perhaps biological, whereas ethnicity is cultural. So it's kind of a parallel to the whole idea of sex versus gender, that sex is biological and gender is social. But as we've seen, the sort of cross commonalities and the intersectionality of it makes it more difficult than just to say that. And we might ask too, why is it not okay for a white person to identify as a member of a marginalized group? And one of the reasons for this is because they don't share that cultural history in the same way that some people would say that women share a cultural history of oppression that non-biological females don't share. So there are some racial skeptics who say, look, we can't categorize race in a biological way. It just should be discarded completely. It just doesn't really exist. And again, they argue this partly from science, that genetics does govern certain traits, but it doesn't necessarily govern those traits that we associate with race. So genetics will determine the shape of your chin, which has nothing to do with your race. And so they argue for normative race elimination, discarding the categories of race altogether, or racial nominalism, which only admits races as social identities but not as biological categories. But then some cultural constructivists say we can't get rid of race because even though it is a category only defined by power relations in society and it was largely formed by culture, it still gives rise to unique experiences for different races, and that these unique experiences and meanings that people attach to race do affect people's lives in both good and bad ways. So we just can't get rid of it completely because of those reasons. And there are other reasons as well, which we'll talk about a little bit later.